Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The Committee on Education, Finance, and Taxation now convenes the public hearing. Public hearing notices were given to the media. First notice on Tuesday, July 18. Second notice on Monday, August 7th. And for the record, today is August 11th, and the time is 9 o'clock. The committee will hear and accept testimonies, both oral and written, on the following. The appointment of William Sarmiento to the Public Library for a term length of 4 years, and Mr. Kyle Mandapat for also the Public Library for a term of 4 years. And we'll be hearing Bill number 150-34 COR as corrected by myself, an act to add a new section 2416 on chapter 24, title 11 of the Guam Code annotated, relative to establishing new property tax rate for real property restricted to the requirements of the Federal Low-Income Housing Tax Credit Program and real property with deed restriction involving rental caps made pursuant to agreements with either the federal or local government. Joining me for this public hearing is Senator Will Castro, my vice chair in the committee. Those testifying will be recognized in the order of sign up on the sign-in sheet. Written testimonies may be read. Lengthy written testimonies should be summarized to about 5 minutes. Written testimonies shall be submitted to the committee. Please provide our legislative staff with your written testimony for photocopying. Testimony shall be confined to the substance or the nature of the nominee's appointment. Persons will be allowed to present oral testimony only once. Once you're done, you may be asked to remain in the room for questions or for additional testimony, as may be desired by the members of the panel. When you speak, please make sure that the microphone is on and that you speak into the microphone. Please state your name for the record. We will now begin testimony for Mr. Sarmiento and followed by Mr. Mandapat. If I can get the two gentlemen to come forward. Oh, it is you, Kyle. Oh, welcome, Kyle. Bill. We will start with, I guess we'll go with the age, right? So we'll start with Bill, or William. Okay, Kyle? Yeah, turn on.
Hello. Okay.
Okay. So we'll start with you, with Mr. Sarmiento.
Okay. Good morning, Senators Agustin and Castro. Thank you very much. And good morning to all the people that are here, especially the library staff. Boy, I called this morning, and they're here, support. I said, boy, I love this, and I guess it's all about that, us making it bigger and better and supporting one another here on the island. Okay. So I am really honored that, I've been requested actually by my cousin, Johnny Sablan, to be a board member of the Guam Public Library. Boy, I take that an honor, and I take that very seriously. And of course, it's all of us can do real good things for our island, and whether it be a senator, a governor, a board member, anything. Boy, I think anything to make our island great or good, make it better, especially for kids, because I'm in the education arena. Boy, I'm all for it, and I'm really honored to be here. One of the things that I've really I've been surfing through the internet, and I saw an article a couple of days ago on this from Seattle Post, and the need for public libraries. Is it important? Absolutely. You can be on the North Pole in a farm, and you have the computer, and you have all the information there. But is that it? Absolutely not. We still need that social factor, And according to the article I read a couple of days ago, there's an urbanologist that said that we need third places. And what third places is places like Starbucks, all the restaurants that have computer hookups. Those places are really getting crowded. there's more and more need for that, you know, and that's what we need to sway to in our public places. We have the computers, but we still need that social interaction. And besides that, nowadays the library has been, I would say, a little bit more lenient in opening up, and used to be a place where, oh, everything has to be quiet. But now they're really opening up, and they say, wow, they're having more conversations in there. So it's more lively, and there's interaction. Of course, there are rooms, different rooms, where they can have their conferences, in which I hope we can expand to that. But just let me say, probably skid off the topic a little. At Mount Carmel School, we have so many fairs. And one of the fairs that really come to play is the college fair. And all the students from 6th to 8th grade, they pick a college of their choice that they want to go to. OSU, Harvard, Cal State, UCLA, any university, Oxford. And in addition to that, they would have to write down why they would like to go there, and why they, after identifying why, they also have to put pictures, hey, you know, to make it convincing. So that's the college of their choice. And then we have judges come around. They list the tuition rates, in-state, out-of-state tuition. But one thing that's common, oh, by the way, we put all these things on a trifold, a big trifold, just like a science fair. We put all that. One thing that's common on all the 200 trifolds that we have with college fairs is libraries. All of them had library, pictures of the library. And of course, you've seen some of these libraries that have always already been on movies, like, gosh, I forgot the name of the movie, but you see some libraries famous. So it's not only a meeting place where you sit down and study, but they have expanded that to movies and also conferences. And I believe, boy, these third places are very important here for our island, you know, because we don't only go to actually the little kids, but also the adults, and it's a very nice place for us to start. And of course, the last thing, I know you guys, it's if you build it, they will come. I really believe that. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sarmiento. I'd like to also recognize Vice Speaker Senator Chalai and Senator Muña, who has joined us today. And if you notice that, it's bipartisan because we have 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats. So I guess you two are both in great shape. And I will start with Senator Castro, if you want to have any questions for...
Sure, just some comments, and I want to give you some encouraging remarks. First of all, thank you for accepting the challenge. I had an opportunity to look at your packet, and I see that you're a fellow teacher, but I can also appreciate your degree in information management and your exposure and activism in the performing arts. I see your colleague behind you, Attorney Mike Phillips. You know, I was listening intently, Mr. Sarmiento, to your perspective about the need for greater social interaction. And I have 4 children, one of whom is 18 years. And I could tell you from firsthand experience that that particular generation is, in my opinion, is skewing social interaction to becoming more akin to social media. I think we need to temper that. So I want to encourage you to act upon what you said earlier. At least I got the message, which is looking to help evolve the library from a repository of books and other publication and print media to becoming maybe a more contemporary learning center, a learning center that brings in not just information literacy and digital literacy, but is a place for creativity to occur, for magic to happen, even in the performing arts. And so thank you for taking the time to read up and help us understand your perspective. And God bless, and I encourage you, and as a member of this committee, I look forward to partnering with you to establish something like a Katan Technology Center to do exactly what we talked about.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Chalai.
Buenas.
Buenas.
Thank you for agreeing to this service. It's a term of 4 years, so it's quite a while. And I agree with you that there's so much more potential for the libraries on Guam and for our students. And I just wanted to know what the libraries have changed over the years here. First, I mean, where there was a movement at one time to put them out into the villages, and then I think a lot of those, they brought them back or closed those down and changed them into some other purpose. But what is your position on that, on those satellites, I think they call them, or branch libraries, I guess?
Yes. Well, any way we can reach the people, whether it be children, adults, or whoever, any way we can, putting them out in satellite offices in the villages, we'll do that. But of course, there's always the reality of money. It comes down to scratch. You know, how much scratch do we have? And then with whatever we have, we do the best with what we have. And then, gosh, we're always pushing, you know, to reach people, because I heard this from, I guess, a famous wise man. You know, if we can't bring our friends to the mountain, then we'll bring the mountain to our friends, you know. And we've seen that a lot, and, you know, there's a lot of successes just by doing that, you know. And, you know, and I always tell my students at Mount Carmel, you know, I will never give up on you, you know, whatever the case is, you know, how good or not so good you're doing, but I'll never give up on you. But you don't ever give up on me. And this is where the symbiotic relationship we have with the teacher and the student, where, you know, if you can't come to me, I'll come to you. And whether it be going out and, you know, doing opening public libraries in the different villages to make it happen, let's do so. And I believe, you know, it makes it convenient also for the people that are there in the villages. Now, it's, you know, like I mentioned earlier, boy, everybody has or almost everybody has a computer, and they're so good at that. It's now, what can we bring in addition to that? And I mentioned earlier, boy, those third places is really critical, and that is the wave, I believe, of the future. Like Senator Castro was saying, we really need to add on to what we already have here, and now it's just a matter of getting a scratch, you know, more and more so we can expand, you know. But we do with what we have.
Thank you. UOG also is being hooked into I guess an international or national, trying to remember how they describe that technology, but it's this, the internet, but it's, of course, high speed. They're running new lines, and they're going to hook them into this network of, it's an educational network. And so we had talked to them about extending that. It's, I guess, cutting edge technology. They're going to be able to link all kinds of research and other work that the schools are doing, the universities are doing. But we had also asked them if, because that will be such a huge thing really for Guam, that they try to hook DOE into that also, and they've agreed to work on that, the MIS. So perhaps you want to talk to them, the library board wants to talk to them about you know, library as part of the education network, and see, you know, especially when you're talking about technology and using technology to bring those resources to the students. What about the, you know, the library also serves as a repository for government documents, that, especially in the past. Recently, you know, there's been a lot of changes, like the legislature no longer sends documents there. We keep it here, but sometimes, you know, they end up in a container. But the old things I'm very concerned about, and I think, of course, when the library had a bigger staff, you know, they would catalog those things, and we were able to find things. But I think that's really changed over the years, and I just like to ask that if you could take a look at that and see what we can do, and you know, I think there's always a way. Yes. I hope we can find a way to preserve those historic documents. I think we have historic documents there. I know everybody's idea is this, why don't we just scan them all and we'll be done with it? But I think they have to be a little bit sorted, yes, right? So that things that have the signature of, you know, somebody, I mean, the historic, something that has the that we might want to preserve the actual document and of course, scan everything else and save space, do whatever you need to do. But yeah, those are your decisions. But I just want to point that out, that that's another facet of the library.
Yes.
And I think, of course, the more you can make those materials available, the more they're available for all of us. Right now, I'm on the Commission on Decolonization and still waiting for a website that can show me all the work that's been done over all the years. And we know there's been so much work done in that area over all the years, but there, I guess when administrations change, things move. But I know that that's all available, and I would like all the resources over all the years, the work that people have done on Guam, and it's, you know, I'm very proud of the work that people have done, and I would just like that to be available to all the students, and so that they can even have more depth in their projects that they do, and particularly these history projects. You know, we've seen some of them for the Guam History Day, and so Guampedia is an excellent source, but I think they should have the materials to dig deeper and to get to actual source documents, right? Primary source documents, and so I would appreciate your work in that regard. Yes. But Mr. Sarmiento, I mean, I am proud of all the work that you have done at Mount Carmel, and I think your ideas for this board are good, and I'm trusting that you're going to be bold and do what maybe they haven't done before, because I just think all the boards need that right now. We need people who are creative and not afraid to stand up, and even if it's outside the box a little, right? But to try it. We have to try things, and we've got to be able to withstand if it's political pressure, and they're telling, we've got agencies coming in here telling us they can't ask for any more money, but they know they can do nothing with this budget that they've been allocated, and that surprises me. Right? I feel like that's why you're there. You're there to advocate for what we need, and particularly for the students. So I really appreciate that perspective that you're coming in with for the students. So, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
May I say something?
Yes, please.
Yes. You know, I'm working with the assistant principal down at Mount Carmel. His name is Mr. Camacho, and retired Marine. And we always have this feud thing. I'm a retired Air Force. And we always bump heads when the big guy comes to us and say, hey, let's do project number 55, you know, the first one, I mean, first day, 55. But you know what? We bump heads, but then we always find there might not be any money, but we're going to find ways, find solutions so that if it does come up, we already know we have prioritized it, what we're going to do, hey, if we do have it. And, you know, of course, we always work within our means, you know, like that. Well, and then when we do that, I think it makes us, you know, gives us and also the people we're working for, you know, we're working for, like the parents, especially at Mount Carmel, gives them an idea that, boy, we are under the leadership of people that really know how to take care of problems and also resources and how to prioritize them. So. Okay.
Thank you for the statement. You mentioned, I know you're Air Force, and you got a Marine guy at Mount Carmel, but don't worry, I'm Army retired, so you're in good hands. We'll have now Senator Muñoz, who asked questions, and also who have joined us is Senator Lee, our Legislative Secretary and Committee on Rules Chair. Senator Muñoz.
Thank you, Hafide. Good morning. I didn't even know if I should look through your packets because I've known the both of you for such a long time, and I think I've known everything about you that I can, but just looking through your packets, 4 years is a long time. You know, 2020, that's a really long commitment, and who knows where we'll be even tomorrow, right? But I just want to commend the both of you. Do we have, if you could just bring me up to speed, do we have a full board of?
No, ma'am.
No? So how many do we currently have right now?
Us plus Chris will equal 3.
3?
Yes,
okay,
ma'am.
So we probably need one more, right?
We need a couple more, ma'am.
A couple more. Okay, I don't doubt that just even having the two of you currently on the board, although we can't make any full decisions right now, that there be so much creativity just between the two of you alone already. So I just want to congratulate you for the appointment, and just want to let you know that you both have my full support.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and buenas, Mr. Sarmiento. I had a few questions for you with regard to the modernization and access to the internet at our library, in our library system. So I wanted to ask you if currently there is Wi-Fi access in our public libraries, and I understand that there are workstations that people can use to get onto the internet, but I wanted to know if there's Wi-Fi access and if there are people within the library system that can assist maybe our manamku or others to gain access to the internet.
Yes. On both questions, ma'am. I'm waiting my turn, but I'll jump in. Yes, ma'am. We currently have Wi-Fi enabled areas. Yes, and we have people who are there to assist.
Okay, great. And then I also wanted to ask maybe both of you if you have any ideas on how we might be able to improve that and how we might be able to get more of our young people, more of our students into the Guam Public Library system. I understand that there are a lot of community events for families. I've taken my children to like Dr. Seuss Day, which I really love. There are a number of other programs, but I wanted to ask what programs do you have in mind that we might be able to draw more people and engage more people into the library system?
And Kyle, before you answer that, why don't we, and before we move on with Senator Lee, because I know that everybody's going to want to ask both of you actually the same questions. Why don't we have you first introduce yourself and tell us about yourself?
I was waiting my turn there. I was waiting my turn, girl.
You see how much action we're going to have in the library? Yeah. I can see it. All right, why don't we start with you, Kyle?
Yes, sir. All right, well, thank you so much for having me. My name is Kyle Mandapat. This is my renewal on the library board as I've served for the past 4 years with the term. I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to continue to work with this great group. And I do want to say thank you to the amazing staff that we have. Many of them are here with us this morning. And believe it or not, we're missing probably about 5 people. And that will do it for our staff. You know, we've got a great group of people who are giving their heart every single day. But, you know, the truth of the matter is, resource-wise, you know, I mean, I'm not going to be that guy who sits here and says we need plenty money. But, hey, we need plenty money, right? I agree with you completely, Senator Terlahi, in your previous discussion here, that there are means for us to get around certain things. But when it comes to stuff like staffing, you know what I mean? Our hands are more or less tied in that we've done a lot. And I don't want anybody to discount the work that these guys have put into it, like I said, or anyone has put into it, including some of the board members who have not renewed or tried to come on due to other commitments that they may have. But for the past 4 years, with me being there, seeing the work that goes on behind the scenes, man, the work is, it's inspiring. It really is. We've got people coming through of all ages, and we've got people who need the resources that we provide. But because, like I said, short staffing and the inability to hire, we've had to mitigate the hours that we offer these services in the satellite and branches. We still have the branches open throughout the island, but some of them are down to 1 day, right, Auntie Sam? Yep. About 1 day a week that we allow this. My journey with the library began a couple years back. I take my kids around, right? And I take them to places that are free. And I had the opportunity to step into my childhood library, the Dedito Library. Number one, I didn't realize the hours were so scaled back. But I got in there and whew, when I walked in, I was taken back to Saturday morning after CCD, waiting for my grandma or my mom to come pick us up, but having that opportunity to peruse the books, to smell the books. And the good thing is it still smelled the same. The bad news is it still smelled the same. You know what I mean? The resources that we have, you know, allocated to the group are being utilized for all the right reasons. I will say that now. And I'd love the opportunity to talk more in depth about that at a later time. But for now, that's where my journey began. My journey began by taking my children to this library and being able to say something that I haven't been able to say a lot of times when taking them around our island. This is exactly how I left it. And from then, I started doing some work with the library, asking some questions, and they asked me if I have the opportunity, time-wise, commitment-wise, to serve on the board. I leaped at the opportunity. Since then, we've come a long way. We've opened a brand new branch with the renovations being made here in Agustin, and I know we're discussing potential changes throughout the island as well. We've opened up the Children's Learning Center down here in the Agustin branch as well, which is jam-packed with resources, again, that I'm glad my children have that I wasn't privy to, including computers and laptops. And we've all got children or have observed children who operate these systems way better than any of us can at the age of 4 years old. So to be able to see them in this environment, to see them and how quick they learn is a gift in itself. From there, we were able to, of course, with the renovation of the library, we've got more services available. The computers are there, and in this modern day, I know Uncle Will brought it up, there's so much going on, right? Everything's at the palm of your hand with your mobile phone, with your internet at home. A lot of people may not even give a second thought to go into the library. But if anybody here thinks that nobody goes to the library, I am here to shut that down right away. Because we have got people who come in on the regular with the same intent, to bring their children, to see these pages, to turn them with their fingers. We've got a great group, and I keep putting back to them because they really make it happen. We've got programs on the weekend. We've got parents who come through for readings. We've got people now asking if they can have events at the library, you know, which is something that I love to see, and we'd like to keep going. But there are a lot of things we want to do as well. So as far as my term here with this next 4 years, I want to thank, the board, the president and the entire group for considering me to return. I want to thank you guys for the time in considering me to return. There's a lot of stuff we still want to do, and hopefully we can make it happen in the next 4 years. Biba, Guam.
Mr. Mandapat, Mr. Minto, I know we're going to make it happen. And you may continue, Senator Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So actually, if both of you, we've looked through your packets, and I've had an opportunity to meet you before, and Kyle, we have a good friendship going back many years. And I know that both of you, thank you, sir, for your service to our country, and Kyle, your continued service to our community. And I know both of you have had the opportunity to travel. And so I wanted to ask you if there is like a dream library in other places in the world where you visited, and one aspect of those libraries that you'd like to bring to Guam, what would that be?
For me, it would probably be the availability more so of services. Like I said, we have a great team and they've got a lot going on, but we're limited as to the hours that we can offer these services. In certain libraries across the country, these places are open till midnight. They're open till 10. They're open. We close, normal traffic times. They've got branch libraries throughout the country that are open, beyond the 1 day a week. That's the biggest thing that I feel we could attempt to make happen, or that's my dream scenario. Because, when homework's due, it doesn't go based on our schedule, it goes based on the kid's schedule, based on the student or the teacher's schedule. And I'd like for us to try to be a little bit more accommodating to that if the resources permit.
I've been to, I lived overseas in Asia and also in Europe. And I like France's library. I like Germany's library. The one that I guess also I'm impressed with is Harvard. And when we did our college fair, our students, that's 4 or 5 out of 200, maybe 10 of them wanted to make a copy of Harvard's library and put it in their trifold. And that library, boy, is so impressive. I've been to Harvard, but not, to the classes, but just to the library. And it's very impressive. But what really goes beyond that, like I mentioned, is those third places where they hook up, they socialize. They even have little shops where they can have coffee in the morning. Even the stores around them sometimes open their stores because they anticipate the students to be studying on the weekends. So if there's one thing I would like to see is the libraries open up 7 days a week. Now, I just came from Boise, and right after church, my grandkids, we went right outside church, they have a bookmobile. you know? So like I mentioned, I'm going to go back to what I mentioned in the beginning, is that if, you know, the people cannot come to the library, then we have to find a way to make it to them, you know? Find all the things, because if that's the wave of the future, then I believe we need to move towards that. Okay, but if we can open it up 7 days a week and bring the library to the people, I think that will, you know, that will be a really good start, you know, for our people of Guam here.
Sujusmasi. And Kyle, one thing that I wanted to mention is I shared that similar experience. I was raised by a single mother, and a lot of times we couldn't afford to, a big treat was to be able to rent movies. And we couldn't necessarily afford to rent movies every week. So we would go down to the Hagåtña library, and she would let us pick out these story time videos, and in addition to the books that we would receive. And that was like the biggest treat for our week, was to be able to rent videos and rent books from the library. And so, yeah, that was a big part of my experience growing up on Guam, and I'm really glad, because I think that for all of us in the room, it's really helpful to continue that mission of lifelong learning, and I think that the library is so integral to that. One of the things that I think one of my colleagues had mentioned is the amount of people on your board. And Kyle, we've had this conversation before, and I know, and I wanted to just bring it up for my colleagues to mull over, not just for the library board, but for other boards and commissions in our government. Can you tell us what the incentive is on the library board? How much do you receive per meeting?
We receive a ticket to heaven, because it's all volunteer.
All volunteer.
There's
so
no stipend. There's no, you know, we get water, which is delicious, and we get friendly people that we can work together with to make a difference. But other than that, there is no compensation, ma'am.
Yes, certainly that's something that I'd like to revisit, at least to, I guess, incentivize you, but also to reward you for your time. And it's not just the time that's spent at the meetings. I know that there's preparation that's involved in advance of the board meetings, and if we want a full and really robust board, in addition to what you've already been doing, I think it's important that we try to provide some incentives for board members for their time.
Can I just say, Senator, I'm so sorry.
No problem.
Again, that was a conversation we've had, and yes, you know, I've talked with other board members of other groups in the government, and they mentioned there was some kind of thing going on there. But, you know, it's in me personally, and I don't know if I'm sure Uncle Will follow along. I'd rather take that $25, that $50, however much you know, people get paid to be on boards, you know, for the one meeting or whatever the case may be. I'd rather take that and pay someone $10 an hour to sit at the Barrigada Library for 5 hours.
All right.
On a different day besides Tuesday, Thursday. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do. Thank you so much,
But I thank you
Kyle.
for thinking of that.
Sujusmasi.
Second the motion.
Yes, and thank you both in advance so much for continuing to promote literacy in our community. I think that's a really big piece of the puzzle that's missing. And I know that our teachers and a lot of our school administrators and people in workforce development are constantly trying to promote that and ensure that people in our community read and write. I know, Kyle, you have an extensive background in writing, and I think that's something that's missing from a lot of the people when they enter the workforce. So I want to thank you in advance for all the work that you're doing on that front. Sujusmasi.
Thank you, ma'am.
Now I'll go back to my fellow senators. Do you have any follow-up questions? Because now we got Mr. Manabet spoken.
He had all the fun. It's my turn now.
Yeah. So, I'm going to start with the vice speaker first. Will, just relax, Senator Will. Yes, she is.
Kyle, thank you. Thank you for agreeing again to do this for 4 more years,
Yes,
and
ma'am.
for doing it for all those years. I very much appreciate that, and I'm so glad you're so enthusiastic about it. It's really refreshing to see that, and thank you to all the staff for making it very easy for these board members. But no, for all your work also. Thank you for being here today also. I just want to ask, what is the condition of the bookmobile right now?
At last look, the bookmobile is down. I know we've been talking with several groups as far as making the repairs. You know, to be honest, that's the one thing. So I told my dad I was coming here for the confirmation hearing. He's not able to make it because he's working. And the first time I came on the board, they all came down. It was like a party. But the first thing he said to me was, "Why again? You didn't even fix the bookmobile yet?" You know, and my dad and my mom, you know, they grew up in that era where the bookmobile was so prevalent and so available. We've been talking to some people in regards to fixing it. My personal suggestion is it's time for us to get a new one. And, you know, maybe it's not the form of the bookmobile that we know it as, the humongous bus, you know. As Uncle Will pointed out, technology has come through in so many ways. Maybe it's time for us to start moving in the direction of more ebooks and stuff like that. That is something, again, we've been working on, looking into licenses for ebooks and programs that are available to the other libraries. You know, for us being a small population, the price is kind of steep, but we're going to continue to look for ways. As far as the actual physical bookmobile is concerned, hopefully, you know, we can get some form of it up real soon.
Thank you. I also want to thank you all for your hard work on these facilities. I know some of them are old, but, and then the new one, I mean, the renovation down here, it's beautiful. It really is I was so proud to be in there for FestBack. When they had all the forums in there, I thought that was an excellent place to have those. I'm so glad they chose it and to showcase our library.
Yes,
and so I was very proud. And I'd love to see more and more of that. All the things you described, the community center, you know, bringing the community in. I think that's the goal. And so I very much appreciate your hard work in all of that.
Thank you, ma'am.
Senator Muñoz, you know Kyle. Okay. Senator Castro, yep, your follow.
You want me to close or you want me to come in, Kyle? Okay. First of all, I want to thank you, Kyle, for continuing to serve. And I don't know who recruited you the first time, but it was definitely a good move on the part of the administration. So thank you for continuing.
Yes,
I look forward to your service. But you know, what struck me, actually, I had no idea you had children. So I was very sensitized to the fact that you saw the libraries as a center for families as well. So the chairman will close this discussion, but he did ask me to bring out a couple things. You know, we're extremely pleased with the caliber of the two nominees. And so if I know the president, Johnny Sablan, well enough, and I think I do, he always attempts to surround himself with the best and brightest in order that we can go to better places in a shorter amount of time. So thank you, Mr. President, for working on that. The Vice Speaker alluded to a really good idea, and this is something that I know the Chairman's been trying to put together, so we hope to get with you folks on this concept of a Library of Congress. As a former director of BSP, we archive certain things, but I think we can do a better job trying to centralize a repository, not just for documentation, but for like digital assets that the government subsidizes. For example, software that we pay for through TAF, through the GVB TAF. That is, in my opinion, I know we may have some theoretical differences, is the property of the people of Guam, and so would GIS maps that we generate. So we'd like to talk with you about that as part of the Committee on Education's overall education reform initiative that he hopes to kick off sometime in September. With that said, I just want to encourage you to continue to be yourselves, but to change the game. Break the paradigm in order that we could do better things in a shorter amount of time. And for the record, I don't speak for the chairman, but for the record, I am not averse to our public library system partnering with local not-for-profit organizations in order to best fulfill the mission. So thank you. Godspeed to you both.
Thank you so much.
I think before I close on the two of you gentlemen, I'd like to ask Mr. Sablan, did you still want to give oral testimony for these two young men? I mean, considering your age, Johnny, that's why I say young men. And I know Johnny well. Sir, please join us, Mr. Sablan. I think Mr. Sablan has sang at most of the libraries up north and down south.
Times.
So, many times, see? That's why. Help these two gentlemen. We have Mike here also.
Guaho si Johnny Sablan, imos gehelu gi Departamentin Kaho Gwinahan Samoro, President in Department of Chamorro Affairs, and I oversee the Guam Public Library System based on the reorganization that happened on 2011 through executive order by Governor Calvo. And I have to say, I am just blessed with great staff at the Guam Public Library. Can you please stand up? I just need to applaud them, you guys. These are the core people. Go ahead, Terry, if you can. You just wave. And I have to say that they've been wonderful in assisting and making sure that it functions properly, and we've been working on trying to get just the right key people in the board. And I'm so lucky that these two gentlemen accepted to sit on the board. And boy, this is going to be a wonderful 4 years, and at least for the library. And I know that they're very creative, and that's what you need, is a lot of creative people. So I'm asking for your support to confirm them as soon as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Sablan. For the two of you, I thank you for accepting the nomination. I actually look forward to you getting confirmed and before the end of the month. But I'd like to also advise you that even though you require one more member to get a quorum, Senator Will and I will be reaching out. As a matter of fact, all the senators will be reaching out to Mr. Sablan and to all the board members. Quorum or not, let's talk about how we can help the library. Because you may not have a meeting, but we can come up with a bill to help you. And if we have to adjust the number of members to reduce it so that you can get a quorum, then we just do that. We do what we need to do to get it right. Because I know for a fact that the libraries are struggling. And I honestly believe that as Senator Castro brought up the digital system, and Senator Chalai brought this up, I happen to be the oversight chair of education. It covers also UOG, DOE, and GC. And I know we can work with the public libraries. We can work something out. There's nothing we can't do as long as we all work as a team. It's not about Senator Snogsy, it's about the people of Guam and our children. And that's all I want to do, is help the children of Guam. And I like the idea of the bookmobile. I like to figure out how we can work this. Maybe we can ask Attorney Mike Phillips for some funding. I mean, stop it. Mike's probably looking at me like, hey, hold on now, I got Mount Carmel. And you know what? And that's all I'm going to be looking for. We need to find a way to get this on the road, to success, because the kids are suffering. You all know that. The kids are suffering out there. And there's parents out there that would love to go in there and maybe not necessarily open up a book, but learn how to work a computer, be able to research on how they can better their lives or help their children. And I honestly believe that we're going to have fun. I know I'm going to have fun with Kyle. I know I'm going to have fun with Bill. And Johnny's going to say, Senator, let's do this. And I'm going to say, okay, let's put it together. Let's get, the five of us together, and we'll do it. Because I know Senator Chalai has that in her heart. She wants this thing fixed. She doesn't want to hear no more stories. She wants to hear actually great stories about what's going on in the library. And that's what I want to support. All right, and I thank you, gentlemen, for, like I said, accepting the nomination. And I look forward for your serve. And you're supposed to get $50. Huh? I mean, you're supposed to, if you have a quorum. Now, 4 years, boy. Now, Kyle, one of the catches is you got to have a quorum. Mm-hmm. Establishes a meeting. You're supposed to get $50 a meeting, no more than $100 a month. Hey. And your funding is coming from the passport office, right? Mr. Spahn, you're aware of that, right? Most of the, 50% of passport goes to DOE, 50 is supposed to go to library. So we need to figure out something here, because I don't know how DOE is working this, but I'm going to find out real soon. And then I want to be able to work with you, and we need to be able to share their resources. You can't just keep it all at DOE, and then the public library is where all the students are going at the end of the day, because the schools are closed. So we need to work something out where we make it work, because it's all about the students. Okay, so I know you back pay, forget it, Kyle. Anyway, thank you, gentlemen. Unless any of the senators have any follow-up they wanted to bring up. If not, I look forward to you serving and getting you confirmed, hopefully by the end of the month. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. You're all very pretty. Thank you.
All right, Kyle. That completes the nomination for the public library. We will now move to Bill 150-34. Do we have the sign-in sheet?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I know, can we just say that?
The Christmas party. Joe says the darndest thing.
Okay, on the bill 150-34, we have, let me see, oral testimony from Mr. Camacho. If you can please come forward. We have Mr. Errol Lee. Sir, please come forward. We have Veronica Ramirez. Would you like to speak? Or, okay, please come forward. We have, everybody's in support. Let me see. Miss Chaco. You have a, is this Kionika Chaco? Or, you know, if you accidentally sign as oral testimony, just say you're not going to testify, and that's not a problem. Did you want to speak? Okay. And then we have also Ronawin. Same, you want to speak? Please come forward. And what we'll do is we'll start out with who would like to start first. So, even though the order of signing was Mr. Camacho, but if because I know you're all pretty much in the same group, so okay, and you from your left down first, and you be the tail end, huh? Mr. Camacho likes to close the loop. He provides all the funding, so that's the nice part. So, ma'am, please state your name and then.
Good morning, Chairman San Agustin. My name is Janice. Good morning, Senators. My name is Janice Jacob. I am the Regional Manager for Ironwood Properties here on Guam and also through Saipan. Today I'd like to read a letter in support of Bill number 150-34. Ironwood Property Management, on behalf of the 5 Ironwood housing communities currently operating on Guam, would like to take this opportunity to submit written testimony in support of Bill 150-34, an act to add a new subsection 24116, Chapter 24, Title 11 of the Guam Code annotated relative to establishing a new property tax rate for real property restricted to the requirements of the Federal Low-Income Housing Tax Credit Program, and real property with deed restrictions involving rental caps made pursuant to agreements with either the federal or local government. Ironwood is one of Guam's largest affordable housing, managing and currently providing 5 communities with 434 affordable apartments. Our communities provide clean, safe houses and apartments below market rates to families that earn less than 60% of the area median income. Ironwood communities were financed with low-income housing tax credits. This is a federal program that requires for a period of at least 15 years, the units can only be rented to tenants earning less than 60% of the area median income. Further, the rents are set by HUD annually and must be limited to what a person making less than 60% of the median income can afford to pay, which equates to rents of approximately half of market rents. The LIHTC program has been extremely successful in Guam, allowing nearly 1,000 units to be built with federal subsidies that help offset the high cost of construction on Guam. Earlier tax legislation specified that property assessed value would be determined by replacement cost. This level of value makes sense for traditional commercial properties, but cannot be supported by a LIHTC property because LIHTC properties have to limit their rents at current rates set by HUD. This is required by a recorded deed restriction running with the properties for a set period of at least 15 years and often more, which also makes selling an affordable housing property very difficult. Incidentally, this legislation would no longer apply to these properties once this income restriction is lifted. Affordable housing properties also have higher administrative costs than traditional properties because we have certain compliance costs, inspections, and other reportings mandated by both GUR and the U.S. Treasury Department. Currently, our properties operate at extremely thin margins because we can't control the costs such as insurance, healthcare, or property taxes, and at the same time, we don't have the ability to raise rents to cover these costs as they increase. So we are more sensitive than most properties to increases in operating costs. By the same token, a cost approach to tax value is not really appropriate because the costs were largely subsidized by federal housing tax credits and don't reflect the actual value based on the particular use of the property. We strongly support Bill 150-34, which provides that the assessed valuation of property used for such residential rental purposes, subject to the Light-C restrictions, shall be determined using the actual net operating income of the properties instead of the construction or replacement costs. We believe it fairly balances the needs of Guam to collect property taxes against the affordable housing community's ability to pay its fair share of property taxes. While some states provide full tax exemption for affordable communities, Bill 150-34 does provide some relief for affordable housing communities by providing a reasonable method of establishing a tax value for these unique properties. If Guam passes this tax relief for affordable housing, it will join most other states in the Union in providing property tax relief for affordable housing. All of our nearest neighbors, including Hawaii, California, and Washington, offer tax breaks for affordable housing projects, and some states such as Massachusetts offers a full property tax exemption for affordable housing. This bill does not provide a full exemption from taxes, but merely levels the playing field for affordable housing by connecting the tax value to the actual income potential so that property taxes remain affordable over time for these projects. But Guam still collects property taxes from these properties. If the current system of replacement costs was imposed on affordable housing, the projects would initially struggle to break even and soon risk default because there is no revenue source available to meet this much higher tax burden. While cost approaches, comparable sales, and income capitalization are all acceptable property valuation techniques for most commercial properties, only the income approach provides a fair way to value Light-C properties given their income restrictions and general illiquidity. We provide this housing as a much-needed service in the community, filling a need for a new, safe, and affordable housing for Guam's working families. Ironwood also offers free after-school care programs for working parents along with other beneficial programs, and these programs would have to discontinue if we are forced to pay property taxes based on replacement cost. Again, I thank you for your efforts in providing for a statutory solution regarding this matter, and we look forward to your continued responsiveness and remain grateful for your great work as our department's legislative oversights. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lee. Before I move on to anybody else, do you have written testimony with you? And if you have, can I have my staff get a copy so that we can make copies, and then as you're reading your testimony, we'll be able to ask some questions about your testimony. I hate for you to leave today and then we've got some questions, or we may misheard what you stated, and then we end up debating when we should be agreeing, right? Okay, so do you have something? It's the same one? Okay, so, you got copies? Is it the same? It's all here. Okay. You want to speak? Please feel free. And just state your name and so we'll...
Good morning, Senators and Speaker. My name is Veronica Ramirez. I am currently the program coordinator for Ironwood. I'm responsible for providing the after-school care program to our residents and providing other programs that benefits them socially, academically, and physically. So I reach out to the community like UOG to provide opportunities for their School of Education students to provide methods, educational methods with our kids. The Guam Public Library has worked with us awesome by providing the bookmobile, but apparently it's down. We've also participated every reading program with the Guam Public Library, and both our communities are very active in that. The Guam Community College, GED, uses our facility, our center as a venue for the northern areas, for the individuals who are identified that needs to continue their GEDs. We've been participating in that. In our fiscal areas, we have our karate program led by Mr. Errol Lee, who also has volunteered his service, and our students and our parents also take part in participating. So for Ironwood's position in having to be in a position where they might have to cut the programs, it will affect not just the kids or the parents who needs to find other means to put their kids in other areas that they may have to pay, and the other programs that benefit the folks. We might, it's going to be a struggle. It's going to be, and my job. I would need to look elsewhere, but it does benefit me, and I feel it benefits the students and parents and the other partners that help us out to get by. So.
Alrighty. I'll skip you and we'll go to him, then we'll come back to you, okay? Sir.
Hi, my name is Ronovan Chaco. Ms. Veronica Ramirez is my mom. She's not, she is the program coordinator, and I used to be in that program. Not for just to keep, for my mom to keep an eye on me, but as for myself, because the learning system is good there. It also provides a safe environment for the kids when parents can't really pick their kids up after school, like for 3:30 and stuff. It also provides good academics, extracurricular activities for the kids to make sure that they are on track with their grade level. It makes them have a very good social diversity for everybody. It provides some fun activities, rewards if they're willing to be good in the place. We do cleanups around our community. We actually have a lot of fun with bike days and all that stuff. The programs there for the community center and the whole housing is to join the whole community and to provide assurance that you can live there with a safe environment that is affordable and is also protected, well protected, so that no one here has any problems with anybody. The system where all the different groups that my mom mentioned to take place in that community center is a way to show that we can spread out from not just where we are, but to different other programs to join us. My experience there was difficult at first because I was shy, but getting to know different people, getting to know how I can work and how they can work and how we can work together, it helped me a lot. So I just wanted to point that out. That's all.
Mr. Jacob, right?
No.
Oh, no.
Sorry. Mr. Lee.
Okay. You're next.
Good morning, distinguished senators. Thank you for having me today. My name is Errol Lee. I am actually not a part of Ironwood. I'm actually not really from Guam. I've had the distinct pleasure of actually living on Guam now for 8 going on 9 years. So I say I'm not Chamorro by birth, but by assimilation. So I love it here. I work here now. Please allow me to speak to you guys a little bit and give you a little bit about my background. I just became recently familiar with this particular bill that you guys are debating, and I'm not really going to discuss the merits as far as what the income means to the government of Guam. What I will say is the detriment that might happen to Ironwood. In particular, this community center. As you know, the very first things to go anytime a business is trying to meet their needs as far as expenses is what they consider extras. And usually that extra in this particular case would be their programming in their community center, which would be a detriment. Again, allow me to digress just a little bit. I'm originally from New York City, born and raised in Queens, in Brooklyn, from low-income parents. Okay, we lived in low-income housing. That housing and that cost structure that they had allowed my father to become the first person to get his college degree in our family, going back years, which allowed me to go on and get my master's degree, which allowed me to be here. Without that cost structure, it wouldn't have been possible. I was also able to have PAL, if some of you are familiar with the Police Athletic League back in the States, which is the community service center in New York City at the time. I'm the karate instructor at Ironwood, and my father's my first instructor. And when we first started, he started at a community center and he didn't charge at all. Unfortunately, that community center is going the way that this one was. There's expenses that they could not afford, they had to close. So we moved to a church. Luckily, the basement of the church allowed us to be there. And again, we didn't charge, or he didn't charge, by the way, this was back in 1977. He didn't charge anybody anything. But eventually, they all decided that all the students and the parents decided they would donate $5, and all that donation went to the church. When I came out to Guam, I wanted to share the discipline and some of the athletics in martial arts, and I wanted an environment where I didn't have to charge them $150, $200 a month. I was very lucky to come across Ms. Janice and Ms. Veronica said, hey, we got a community center, we're looking for people. It was an awesome opportunity for me. Since then, I've had 150 people come through, 150 kids come through. Ronovan was one of them, Keonica in the back is one of them. We've also had an opportunity about 4 years ago to take 2 of my students over to Jacksonville, Florida. First time they've ever been on an airplane to be part of a martial arts program. We had an opportunity about 2 years ago, through the help of fundraising through the community, to take 14 of them up to Nagoya for a weekend up in Japan and spending it that way. Somebody mentioned, I think it was the Honorable Senator Castro, said a place for creative learning. I think that's what you mentioned earlier, sir. This place, this community center is truly that. Not only do we have the Martial Arts Center, which by the way, I don't ask for anything, they don't pay me any funds. I do it because I think it's a value to the community. Ms. Veronica brings in, he mentioned the GED students. Every after-school program, they're there to help the students with their learning. There's a community center. Someone mentioned just earlier about internet. There's an internet center there. If they cannot keep this community center open, that is gone from them. They will not have that ability. They have movie nights. Ma'am, Ms. Lee, you mentioned that you had an opportunity when you was a kid that you weren't able to afford to go out, so you were able to rent those movies. It's available at the center. I was impressed. I've been with these kids for the last 7 years now. Just the other day, I had one of them come up to me and mention, he's like, do you know I learned about the crust of the Earth's mantle? Really, 6, 7 years old. Learned that at Ms. B's summer program. So there's a lot of value and benefit to this program that will be lost if this particular bill takes that funding away from the program. Forgive me, I took some other notes here. The movie theater, dance theater. They routinely put on dance performances and drama performances. This is an all-in-one inclusive environment for these children and these parents. And again, we're talking about low-income parents who may have no car, who may have one car and mom and dad have to work, and they may not have the availability to go to the library. So this, in my opinion, with the gentleman that were here earlier for the library, this is an extension of that community outreach program. Again, I can't speak to the economics that might be detrimental to Gov Guam, but I can speak to the detriment of that particular community if that funding for that program goes away. Again, I thank you for your time and your consideration of this method. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Mr. Camacho, sir, you're it.
Thank you, Senator. Senators, thank you for allowing us to participate in supporting Bill 150. Before I do that, I just wanted to let you guys know that before we came for a legislative resolution where the sponsor of San Agustin and Senator Rodriguez did, about almost 2 years ago, we went through the proper remedy first. That remedy is to go through Department of Revenue Taxation. We provided a third-party independent appraiser using one of the methods that's allowed by statute. Again, as they describe it, they got the sales approach, cost approach, and the income capitalization approach. We met with Department of Revenue Tax a couple of years ago. They asked us to go to the Board of Equalization to present our case. That's a normal process. We went to the Board of Equalization. We hired a third party to present our case and to also show statutory laws that are done in other states providing affordable housing tax rates. We did all that and until it came to the chairwoman, Mrs. Akubi, that told us their hands are tied. The existing Guam statute does not allow for low-income housing tax credit projects to be participatory like other states unless the legislature amends the law. So for all due respect, we did go through the proper protocol, just to let you guys know. This has been a 2-year journey, so this just didn't happen overnight. It's a 2-year journey, and we're here now asking your support on Bill 150 to close that gap. Real important before we explain about our program, I just wanted to make sure that we are not asking for an exemption. Other states have exemption. We still want to be part of a paying member of the community and paying our taxes. But as you all know, as we described the low-income housing tax credit, we are restricted on our target audience to the very low income, and we are capped at our rental rates based on a formula by HUD. So even though there's talks in the streets that they're going to raise the GRT from 4 to 4.9, we cannot raise our rents to cover those costs, if that happens, for example. Even though right now you guys have a streetlight fund. In our community, we pay for all our streetlights. Our community has every streetlight funded by our operational costs, paid to the Guam Power Authority. We're not dependent on government of Guam. We pay that out of our operation budget. Even though you may want to raise the minimum wage, we pay my staff more than minimum wage anyways. But all those impacts, whatever those impacts may be, we cannot, by the IRS Section 42 of the code, pass those costs to recover. So all we're asking is some kind of fair playing field on the way they treat our tax assessment. Presently, right now, they're only treating us on market value. Market value is free market, free assessment. But as we described, LIHTC is a restrictive program. It's restrictive rent. We're not market rent. So we just wanted to show that distinction. As I did my little research in the real property tax, this August body in the past have already passed other reduced rate programs. For senior citizens, there's already reduced rate programs for that market. For the disabled, there's also a reduced rates program for that. And also for homeowners who are planting fruits or vegetables as considered farming in their own property, can request for an exemption. So we know that the August body that created the statute of the real property tax is flexible in allowing these types of categories. All we're saying is we just want to have some type of an amendment to allow low-income housing tax credit to have some fair share paying, but not as market rate. And the approach that this bill did is the income approach based on a cap rate. That's the approach, that's one of the methods, and that's some of the methods that's used in other states. So I just wanted to make sure that this is where we're at. But I just wanted to add further to my Veronica, the son, Mr. Lee, and Janice here. Yes, we've been around for many years. And if you guys may wonder, so how come you didn't ask this request since 2006 when you started this program? Well, if you remember, the triennial report just didn't happen until 2014. So our tax rate was still antiquated prior to 2014. That's when the trigger point happened. After 2014 came, Siska from another real estate firm did the island-wide triennial report, and that's when everybody was hit with the market cost approach, market value. Of course, that's when we triggered our process with Department of Revenue Tax and the Board of Equalization, as I stated earlier, and today this is where we're at. But as Veronica and her son and Janice said, let me just explain our motto and if you guys know what I do here, not only for rental, but we provide programs for our families. We have an after-school program. Veronica can attest, she's been there for a long time, and she's one of my staff that was hundreds of kids that went through our system. But the after-school program comprises of kids coming home and to do their homework with our staff. We help the kids fulfill their homework. And if they need additional help, we assist them in fulfilling whatever category of homework, from history to math to science to English. We do that at no cost to the kids. We have a computer center, internet, as you described with your library, to have access for them to do research. And what we do for the parents, we have a parents' night out Friday night. We still have that, right? Oh, Saturday? Saturday. Where the kids come to our community center with our staff, no cost from the family, and the parents can go out with their loved ones and their spouse and have a good evening in Guam's economy, spend their money in Tumon or go to a movie. We watch the kids, and I'm assuming that's for the evenings, right? We do those things. We do this because we want to sustain our tenant base. And this is why, if you just want to see the proof in the pudding, just come to our community center. You'll see our kids there after school. You see them engaging, like the young gentleman said, engaging with different diverse demographics, because we got all kinds of members of our community there, and it's just amazing. And I'm proud of these guys, and they didn't say it, but every year the U.S. Department of Interior chooses Ironwood when they do the island-wide park cleanup. And secretary, if maybe you can, the last secretary under the Obama administration, not this one yet because we haven't met her, every year comes to Guam. I don't know if you guys know that, but we partner up with them and clean the federal parks with her, with our kids. So these are the things where we go out to the community and have our kids engage in getting involved. So whenever we try to cut funds and save funds, it's not to increase our profit margin, is we give it back to our community, because the way I see my profit is karma. Whatever I give back, I think I'll get tenfold. So that's why if you notice this is not the only hat I wear, I have other hats in my housing program, but we're just being blessed. Nothing's perfect, but we try to do our best for our young families. And when we sustain our household, the mothers and fathers, they feel comfortable that their kids feel safe. The kids will fulfill their homework. The kids will have weekend activities. We have summer programs. Mr. Lee, for 7 years, been contributing his time. So once in a while, we have our fundraising efforts also, because we can't cover it all, but our team fundraises and we raise money for those trips he mentioned. So he took our kids to Japan. He took our kids to Florida. These are low-income kids that didn't have access to these resources. And we're not asking for any government subsidy or anything like that as normal. We're just looking at our operational costs and budget. And when this happened in 2014, when the trial happened, this is when we started this journey and requested. It's already 2017. That's a couple of years. So I know that I have friends here. I could have asked you since 2015, but my motto is always go through the protocol process, and which we've done. And we're very appreciative, senators, for those who authored the bill, and hopefully we can get the support for the rest to move forward. But I do want to add one clarity on the bill. If you guys, I'm not sure if it's here or not. I wasn't able to read it. As I said, we're not here to ask for a full reduced tax rate forever for the life of our project. Each of our project has a restrictive covenant called an extended rental housing commitment, which is recorded in land management. This is the vehicle that will tell you the term of that affordability period. This is the vehicle that the minimum is 15 years, the maximum is 60 years. And it's GURA or HUD that says if you want to compete with low-income housing tax credit, the longer you keep your units in the affordability market, the more points you get. That's how we compete on these credits. To give a little insight. So we always choose the longer haul because our goal is to sustain this community. As you all know, Guam's majority industry is the service industry market. A lot of our families are from hotels, waiters, waitress, shopping center cashiers, warehouse workers, truck drivers, you name it, we have a lot. And I remember when I first opened the one in Tamuning, I remember when because I'm from that neighborhood, when my wealthy friends in that streets was bashing me in the radio, saying that I'm going to stigmatize the neighborhood because I'm bringing low-income families. I can say this, and I'm glad these guys are here. That's the terminology based on federal guidelines, low income. But at the end of the day, these are working class families because they're still paying rent. They're still paying rent. So what I told that friend of mine, I said, one day, I bet one of your own employees will live in my unit, and that employee will be so productive in your workforce because he knows he could stay in an affordable housing that's capped, never worry about the raising of the rent. He'll know there's a place for his kids to be safe, to fulfill their dream of all these programs and all that. And would you believe 2 years later that gentleman came back and apologized? I'm not going to mention their names because this is public, and said 5 of his employees live in my units. And they're very productive. They have no stress level because they know that they could stay in a place that's affordable and that can meet their budget and not worry about losing their home. And if you ever pass by our community, just go by Ipa Road, you'll never know that's a low-income housing community. If you guys seen it, it's the one with the pitch green roofs in the right next to my friend's development, Talaverde, the $1 million homes. But you never know that that's low income. We don't stigmatize our families. We let them feel that they're part of society. We have rules. We have rules of engagement, strict rules. And that's why we go there. We're about 6 years old there already, maybe 6, 7 years old. We never seen, knock on wood, we never seen any incidents or any blighted architectural situation. I'll tell you our first day, we did see a bunch of trash outside the trash bin, and we thought, oh my God, there's already trash that's not in the bin. But because we have security cameras to protect our families and also to our managers to oversee if there's any incidents, we found out that the families were sending their young kids to throw the trash and they couldn't reach the bin. That's the reason there was trash. So we caught on and we gave notice. But just by looking at that, you can tell that our staff and the management and our parents, we make our family feel important. And 6 years later, we have not yet violated any housing violation, as you've seen in media reports for certain target market. I hope that we can be a good case study for a lot of them, and all that stuff. So this is the reason why I support this bill. But if I could ask one thing with your policy writers, senators, this bill was created strictly for rental communities. I don't know if it's germane because it's two different subject matters. I heard that a lot in TV when I watch you guys. But I can ask and then you guys can check. I also do home ownership. Home ownership is also affordable housing, and there are also restrictive covenants where the homeowners cannot sell it for free market homes for 20 years. And the reason we placed those restrictions from HUD is, as you've seen in our history in the past, when we had the land for the landless and all that, people buy it for 25, and after 3 years, they were able to sell it for market value. No true intent to keep the land for the landless for their use. Well, what we do for affordable housing on home ownership is we have a 20-year restriction also placed on the property, and that's called a declaration of restrictive covenant. That's also recorded on the property, but the families cannot sell it for fair market value. If it's to be sold, it's to be sold to the next affordable housing individual that qualifies under the income guidelines. But unfortunately, they're also paying the fair market tax rate. So maybe this will be in another bill, or I don't know if it's germane, it could be part of it, I don't know. We can talk about that, but there's something for you to consider. So anyways, Senators, I appreciate the opportunity. Again, just to recap, we went through a 2-year journey through the proper protocol. We met with the Board of Equalization, and it was their recommendation that we needed a legislative remedy. So this is why we're here today. I look forward to your support, Senators. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Let me see. I'll start with the Vice Speaker, Senator Light.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for your testimony. Mr. Chaco, I was very impressed by yours, and I'm sure I'm proud. I hope your mother is proud because you, for a shy person, you did an excellent job and a real excellent testimony for what goes on there. And it's such a contrast to what we read in the newspapers about some housing areas or rental units. And so thank you all very much for all your efforts in that regard, particularly the after-school programs, the programs for the youth. I very much appreciate that. It's great for Guam. I just wanted to point out the, do we have any estimates of the impact on the government of Guam from this? Like, would this only apply to your Ironwood? I mean, and how much impact does Ironwood by itself have, or are there other areas like this?
No, when this program was initiated in 2005, at this point, there's 2 developers that utilize this program. We're one of them, called the Ironwood community, and you guys probably heard called the Summertown community. Mm-hmm. These programs are very, very critical because I played a major role in resolving the Lada estates that failed for 20 years. Even though my competitor took over that project and utilized this same program to build the elderly housing project and other light-tech communities, I'm praising my competitor, but we're all one. If you ever drive there, you'll be amazed in Lada Avenue that what once used to be 20 years of jungle and streets and sidewalk. All it took was a legislative amendment, by the way, by another part of this legislative body, because that law was only for home ownership. It was changed to allow home ownership and rental, and that's how low-income housing tax credit was able to infuse for that property. So there's 2 of us in this market. But every year, when we have a housing symposium, HUD asked me to explain the program to the community. Because for 6 years, it was nice being the only applicant always applying. So HUD asked me, can you go out and educate the community? And I said, I will do that. Of course, I'm not going to tell my trade secret. But at the end of the day, it's a program that was created by Congress since 1986. We didn't even take advantage of this since 2005 in Guam. It's almost 20 years later also, 19 to 20 years later. So there are 2 properties. What's the impact to revenue tax? That's the one I don't know. We went through the process, like I said, through this process, went to the Board of Equalization. We asked it, and all they told us was that their hands are tied based on statutory laws. They're not able to entertain us in our request. So I don't know the financial impact to the
Well, Ironwood has two, would you call them two pieces of property, or
we
more?
have five.
Five properties,
That's right.
according to this
Yeah.
definition of property. And then, so let's say this bill passes, and it would change your tax rate, and I guess that's the impact. What's the difference for one piece, just for an example? And I would like to know from Department of Revenue Tax, what would the overall impact be? Because we're going to have to deal with that.
Right now, and when we came in and requested in 2014-15 their original assessment, they were assessing us on market value cost of our unit.
Right.
So,
So market value 2014 versus, according to this rate, yeah, just an example.
yeah, so for example, the market value for our single-family home was, let's say, $200,000. So they were assessing us for that with fair market. So all we did when we came there to go to the Board of Equalization is, how would you assess us market value when we have deed restrictions? Whenever.
No, I understand, but
Yeah.
I'm asking, but this is for the property owner.
We are, that's us.
You're right, not the renter. So
No, that's us.
Yes, so for one property, let's say the tax rate, what would be the difference? This formula gives us what kind of a difference in the tax rate overall?
Oh.
Just a lump sum.
What was
The reason I'm asking is because I don't want
How much was our
to
tax rate
expose your
before?
tax, but what is the impact to the government? So we would be reducing our tax revenues by what
That's for
amount?
sure. You'll be
Yes.
reducing your tax revenue.
Yeah. Is that significant? I mean, what are those amounts? I guess I'm going to ask for that
I think Revenue
to be
Tax should answer
submitted in
that.
writing.
I don't want to put a number out and totally be off-skewed. I just
Okay.
know that presently we are being assessed the normal market tax assessment formula,
Okay.
and all we're just asking is,
Well, the reason why,
yeah.
okay, so then I'm going to,
yeah, that would
I'll
be Revenue
follow
Tax.
up
I
with Revenue
apologize.
Tax on that,
Yeah.
and potential, what they see as to be the potential overall impact, reduced revenue to the government of Guam, right? But I understand the offset, what we're looking at on the other side, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we have to weigh. The formula here says net operating income after all operating expenses are deducted from gross income. And so, I don't know, I'm thinking, I guess I want to know, is this formula, these words used in the other
states
that this is
Yes.
used? So they don't have a problem with this operating expenses category being too broad, or like limiting that or defining that?
No, if you guys want to define it further, that's fine. As long as there's a tax program for us, we're happy for any amendments.
Okay. I understand I understand the theory behind it,
Yeah.
because you are restricted. I understand that. So, what about the? So this valuation, would you foresee this to change? It's based on net operating income. I mean, does your net operating income change every year, or is it stable? Is it something that fluctuates with vacancies in the rental
vacancies,
units?
or for example, if you guys pass other fee structures like BPT going from 4 to 4.9, that's going to affect our net operating income because that's expenses we pay back out. If there's other fees that are imposed, like that's just one example, BPT. We pay GRT based on our cash flow. So right now we're at 4%. So let's assume you guys passed that one for the hospital. Let's assume we're not blocked by that. We're part of the paying BPT members. So our costs will go up from 4 to 4.9.
Okay, so that would include,
that's an operating impact income, yes?
that would include gross receipts,
Yes,
taxes?
that's right.
All right.
And then our normal employee inflationary rate that when we pay raise to our employees. Of course, we're not going to pay them a skew number to try to get zero.
I was going to say, is there a potential then to get to zero operating expenses? I mean, using operating expenses to get to zero net operating income.
Right now, we're still in positive because 80 or 90% of our total development cost is tax credits. So that's why on a $20 million building, it only costs us to borrow $2 to $3 million to build it. So our debt service is very minimal also. So it's not like we're borrowing the full 20 million. So if part of operating expenses, if you borrow 20 million, you have a high debt payment as one of your mortgage payment. We have a very low debt payment because of the tax credit program. So that's another benefit factor there. Okay. So I don't think you're going to ever try to get to zero.
All right.
Yep.
Okay, and then what about this rate that's in the bill right now says 9.41%, but this may be adjusted from time to time by the legislature depending on market conditions, right? So I just guess I want to know, where did you get the 9.41%? Is this?
When we sell our tax credits to investors, this is the internal rate of return they're looking for.
Okay.
Yep.
Do you have something that shows that? I mean,
I can get that in writing from an investor.
Okay, that'd be great. And and then the effective date, it says property taxes levied in calendar year 2014 for collection in calendar year 2015. This would be effective. And that's because of the last assessment?
That's because, as I told you the history, we started our arbitration with Board of Equalization from that time, and that's still pending in their board because, like I said, their hands are tied. They can't do nothing until legislation is passed. I wish they could have solved it then, and I don't need to be here today if they are allowed to amend their internal tax policies, but we tried our remedy, and this is where we're at today.
All right.
So I didn't ask, if you notice, I didn't ask for 2005, 6, and 7 when we started. I only asked when the stuff was triggered and when we went through the proper protocol process.
All right.
Only that time period when we went in through.
When that assessment changed.
Yes.
Right. All right. What about, you said this is available in other states. Can you tell us which states?
Hawaii, but we can probably...
Where they use income capitalization approach.
Maybe what we can do, we can get probably legislative laws that used it, and for whatever, copies of laws that they've used.
Right.
Maybe we can do that, or the research policy guys can help me do that, find that.
I think it helps convince us, I think, and all our colleagues, which states use this and for what purposes are they for the low-income housing or for other purposes?
I'll also provide states that fully exempt it, so if there's 8 of you guys that want to exempt it, that's fine.
All right.
I just want to be a paying member, but I'll provide the exemption one also.
Well, I appreciate that. Okay, thank you for your candid answers, and thank you again for all your testimony. Very, very much appreciate it.
Senator Muya, do you have anything?
We're going to provide them.
Actually, my question was in regards to the effective date, but already had been answered, so I want to thank my colleague for asking that question. I also want to thank everyone on the panel for testifying. I know that the programs are very important, and I understand within a business, whenever some cuts are made, the first thing to go is usually, like Mr. Lee said, usually the very vital ones, and people don't think of them as being vital, but just from Mr. Chaco's testimony, you can tell that those programs are building a better child, which brings a better person into the community. And also, I just want to thank Mr. Camacho for, giving an opportunity to the community to afford housing, because the consequence of that is homelessness. And so I think the programs that you're bringing and the housing that you're bringing is really great for the community. I do understand Vice Speaker's concerns about the impact that it's going to have on the government, but if you look at the opposite side and the consequences of not having this affordable housing, the consequences are much worse on the other end. So I just want to thank you very much for supporting this, and I thank the author for it too.
Thank you. Senator Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, absolutely. And I just want to thank you all so much for being here. I really appreciate your participation in today's hearing, and it really helps to give all of us a sense of exactly what's happening in the community. So I want to thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Camacho, for your foresight and really taking the opportunity to educate yourself on all of the opportunities that are out there and being able to bring those federal dollars here to Guam and help our community. So I really want to thank you for that and for the Sweat Equity Project that you're working on and a number of other programs that really help to benefit our families. Ms. Jacob and Mrs. Chaco, I want to thank you for the work that you do every single day for the Ironwood communities, and also thank you so much, Mr. Chaco, for sharing your story. That's really helpful for us to hear from the youth in our community and to have them be engaged in this process. So your voice is really, it's heard, it's loud and clear, and we really appreciate you taking the time and sharing your experience at Ironwood with us. Mr. Lee, you just look very familiar to me, and I was trying to pinpoint exactly what it was. And, you know, I just finished reading a book by U.S. Senator Cory Booker, and he was talking a lot about some of the strain and a lot of the challenges that folks that are living in the inner cities in New Jersey and New York are having with housing, and how in his family, his mom and dad were very hardworking, middle-class, they're middle-class family, but if they weren't given an opportunity for housing, that was really the crux of being able to have their family flourish and have educational opportunities for their sons. And so I think that's really important, and I really want to applaud you for taking the time to volunteer in our community. And the more I thought about it, I recognized you from a program that United does annually, the Fantasy Flight program. And then I remembered that a number of Ironwood children were there on that date. You might have been there too, Mr. Chaco, and really just to see that opportunity for those children, some of who not only had never been on a plane before, but had never even been to the airport, to have that experience, to get on a plane. So I think it's partners like United, it's partners like Ironwood who really give our children and our families who wouldn't otherwise have these opportunities, the opportunities to really live some incredible experiences in their lives. So again, I want to thank you all for the work that you're doing. One of the questions, and maybe the author can assist me, or maybe you, Mr. Camacho, can assist me as I was looking through this bill, one of the concerns that I had, I understand that this would provide a lower tax rate for some of those who would qualify for low-income housing tax credit, but I wanted to ask what you think the impact would be on the value of neighboring homes or neighboring communities. And I know you spoke a little bit to that with regard to Ironwood in Upper Tumon and Talo Verde. So maybe if you could just expound on that for me.
Good question. When we were first approached in the NIMBY situation, not in my backyard, the first thing they were saying was this will impact property values in our neighborhood because it's for low income. So your question is, if we have a special tax assessment, for example, whatever that number may be, whatever that findings may be from the body of 15, as long as there's a structure, this is just, again, a template to start, and with all your research and finding, whatever the final number is. All I know is that from the appraisal industry, they don't use restrictive properties as comparables. So in other words, if the property I got has restrictive covenants and is tied to tax credit, the question the other neighbors had is it's going to devalue our properties next door because of its situation. According to the appraisal industry that I talked to when that was debated 5-6 years ago, is they do not use our property as comparable because of the restriction. So when the property next door wants to get an appraisal done, they will use market comparable where there's no restriction tied. So this is the reverse. We got all the engagement of the tools. We're being charged market rate with our limited restriction. And vice versa, they can't use us as comparable because of our restriction. So I think, again, maybe your staff can ask an appraiser that question, but I'm just paraphrasing on the finding 6 years ago that was the impact when they were doing a NIMBY approach, especially in Ipaw Road, when the neighbors saying you're going to devalue our property because of low-income housing. And I was told, again, just for clarity, and you can just please check it with the appraisal industry because I'm not an appraiser. We were told that properties that has restrictions cannot be used as comparable market comps for their appraisal. So when they get theirs appraised, it only goes to market comps for free market, where there's no things attached to it to lower the costs. I hope that answers that.
Certainly, and we'll try to get additional clarity on that question. And maybe this is a question that I wanted to pose for maybe realtors, or usually the Guam Association of Realtors attends these kinds of bill public hearings. But maybe this again is a question that you might be able to answer. Do you foresee this bill having any potential impacts to housing or rental inventory for maybe those who might not qualify for low income? So maybe they're on the upper threshold for, they're not necessarily low income, but maybe middle class families.
No, because again, I said we are tied to a targeted, it's specific by HUD to only target 60% of the area median income. So every year, HUD publishes for the Western Pacific an income table. And it's categorized family 1, 2, 3, and so on and so forth. And they say you cannot exceed this income table to meet the 60% income test. That's certified by HUD. Now, you know, you're going to wonder, so who manages you guys? Who makes sure that you are providing that true test so that you're not really getting these tax credits and renting it for $1,000 a unit or $2,000, for example? Well, the IRS Section 42 places a compliance period. And every year, their third party, which is the investor who buys these credits, don't forget, these credits are not offset from GovGuam's revenues. These credits are offset from the Internal Revenue Service. We get audited on our files. Our files get audited to make sure that the families that were initially approved meets the income test. If families were found not to meet the income test, let's say someone just fudged their numbers and they found out that was fabricated, the investors tend to get a recapture call from the IRS. So, you know, I don't know if you understand how this program works. Guam gets an allocation every year from the IRS since 1986, $2.3 million a year. Multiplied by 10, it's a formula. So Guam gets an actual $23 million a year of tax credits to offset the IRS payment. So in the past, we get big corporations like Google, big insurance industry that normally pay IRS $23 million, for example. So instead of them paying $23 million, the Congress said, here's a tax haven for you investors. If you invest your money to affordable housing, we will give you a dollar-for-dollar write-off on your tax exposure with the IRS, but you negotiate your investment with the developer who got awarded the tax credit. In most cases, we get negotiated 80 and 90 cents to the dollar. Now, maybe not much, but this guy pulls in tax credits for Guam, Hawaii, Saipan, whatever region. So they pull $100 million worth of tax credit. We're part of a syndicate pool, and they buy it for $90 million. So if Mr. Bill Gates owes $100 million, he'll say instead of paying IRS 100, he'll buy it from us through this authorized vehicle for 90. We give him a document certified by IRS and our third-party accountant that our project meets all the tests. We give him a value for 23 million, or say 100 million. He takes that, he goes to IRS, here's the 100 million I owe you. Never pays IRS. So he gets to save 10 million, so increases his profit. That's a program to create economic activity for those guys. But guess what else he owns? See, everybody thinks I own Ironwood and my partners. 99.99% of the project is owned by our investors for the compliance period because they buy the credits and they own the assets for depreciation. So they get the depreciation schedule plus the discount that they bought and benefit from that from the IRS. So I'm giving a little backdoor story here. So that's why this works. And that's why you see a lot coming here. Again, it's been available. This is new money coming to Guam. So the good news is we spent $20 million to Guam. You know, I know the formula, and you're right about what the impact to GovGuam, because you guys have to manage the purse string. But we spent, in all our community projects, plus even Summertown, our total investment in Guam is close to $250 million so far. I don't even know the multiplier effect on what happens in FICA or GRT that paid. So I didn't even count that economics part. But that's the money that came in through the tax credit program for investors. These are U.S. institutional investors, by the way. These are not foreign investors. These are U.S. investors taking advantage of federal law that allows them to swap some tax breaks. And a lot of big names are in this business. Bill Gates and all the big guys that pay taxes to the IRS use this vehicle as their tax haven. That's how I call it. The reason why we cannot abuse it here is they want to make sure that those that get the credits here don't abuse it, because they could get recalled for 15 years. So we have a great track record for the last 8 or 9 or 10 years, and I'm always knocking the wood because I depend on these staff, especially her and the key management, to document these documents correctly. The difference, I always tell my real estate friends, if you want to ask, when a real estate friend leases a unit out there, it's a real estate form, a one-page rental agreement. You would not believe our document. After it's done, it's close to 3 inches thick, because all the documentation, because once we get audited, our third party wants to make sure that we comply with Section 42 of the IRS code. If we don't comply and they recall, up to 15 years, remember, they can recall the credits, and they gotta pay back that credit to the IRS. Then that gives us a black eye. Then I can't do no more development. So I'm hoping that we follow all the rules. So
thank you.
That's where we're at.
Thank you, Mr. Camacho. Mr. Chair, I'm also disappointed that the Department of Revenue and Taxation isn't here to answer some of the questions that my colleagues have posed, and I also have questions with regard to that. I wanted to know, it's my understanding from reading the bill that should this go into effect, property taxes levied in calendar year 2014 could be, I guess, revisited. So I just wanted to know, and maybe Mr. Chair, you might be able to help us get this information, how much will DRT have to refund in taxes in total due to the effective date? And so that was my question. But again, I want to thank you all so much for participating in this hearing. It's really important that we hear from the community exactly how they might be impacted, either positively or negatively, from the bills that we consider. So your voice is extremely important in this process. Sidus Masi. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Lee. Senator Castro, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to thank you, Mr. Camacho, for coming here and sharing the program. Everyone else who testified. For me personally, whenever you're able to get the private sector or a faith-based organization or a not-for-profit entity to build up, to strengthen, and to hold up this community, I feel much more comforted. Like many people in the room, perhaps, I too grew up in a middle, if not low-class family. My family's home, as you may have known, Mr. Camacho, burned down in totality. As a young adult, I had a business that did well and then crashed. And I guess my point would be this, that it's in moments like that that I wish I had programs like yours and a community like yours to help encourage me and lift us out of the ash. And I guess my final statement, Mr. Chair, is that it's best left in the hands of folks who want to do this kind of work, even for free, rather than leave it in the hands of government to provide that kind of social program to help people transition out of poverty. So I thank you. I look forward to the supporting data that should be provided by the Department of Revenue and Taxation, but I do encourage you to continue forward in terms of looking for new and innovative ways to support this community. Thank you.
Thank you, my colleagues. And I thank the folks that have testified today. Mr. Camacho, I will be contacting you. I'd like to sit down with you and kind of tweak a little bit of what some of my colleagues asked about the bill. We'll sit down and we'll change a little bit of the verbiage. And for my colleagues, I did invite Revenue and Tax. Shame, shame, but they didn't show up. And if there's an impact in the government, then they'll have to figure out how to fix it. But I see that the impact may be on families and on children. students, kids, minors. That's what I'm worried about. Because you're taking care of, you identify as low income, they're the worker bees. You know, that's where the worker bees are at. Those are the folks, you identified who they were. And those are the folks I'm concerned about because exactly what you're saying. When anything goes up, when the price of goods goes up in the government, you're restricted from passing it on. So you're going to need some relief. Otherwise, the program, I guess, will pretty much fall apart. You end up no more after schools, a bunch of stuff. A bunch of programs that you have at Ironwood will stop. And that's not to the advantage of our community. I mean, it's quite obvious that Ironwood, I'm hoping that maybe if we're fortunate enough, and I'm really looking forward to this bill pass, then maybe you can build more Ironwoods around the island so we can kind of change the attitude of the people of Guam a little bit. You know, it's not only up in Dededo and Tamuning, but you have other areas, and I know, Carlos, you know where they're at. You're just waiting for the right opportunity and the right investors to line up to say, Mr. Camacho, let's do this. But I do look forward to working with you, and we can talk also about that ownership program, and if the colleagues that are here today, like you mentioned, it could be germane, but it was brought up in the hearing. And if we can work it, I can get it to the members that are here today, and if they're in agreement to it, we can amend what we have. But we'll talk about that after this hearing. Okay? Sir, go ahead.
Just one final closing, if you don't mind. Thank you, Senators, for the opportunity. Again, like I said, we went through the protocol process. Yes, you're correct, Senator. There will be an impact. I just hope that the impact won't be the deterrent factor to offset our affordable housing program. I only wanted to say one comparison, that there's already laws in Guam for QCs, for wealthy organizations, big corporation, not paying taxes and all that, because to create jobs, which is fine, we support that, whatever way to grow the economy on the economic side of it. I just know that when it always comes to the low-income community, our goal is, we're not trying to cut this so we can raise our profit. Our goal is to sustain affordable housing, sustain our programs. But I leave it up to the 15 members. By the time we provide our findings on other states and different laws they pass on their tax program, then it'll be up to you, the 15, to, of course, come up with something. You don't have to be this. I know this can also be updated and amended, as long as if there's something for the affordable housing community program. That's what we're looking for. Thank you very much.
Mr. Camacho, you can be assured that one way or the other, this bill will be presented and reported out. That's why I need to get with you real soon, so I can get back with my colleagues, because I give myself 5 days for my staff to get this done, wrapped up, and submitted. Okay? So you can expect, it's going to move forward. It's not going to sit. I don't like to hold anything in my committee. Sir, Mr. Lee, you wanted to bring some up?
Yeah, my apologies. Just one last thing. I do not work for anybody up here. I'm part of this community because I want to be. The proof in this is seeing. So again, I won't speak for anybody else up here, but I teach there Monday through Thursday every week. I invite you to come to any of my classes anytime, meet my kids, meet their parents. And I also, a personal invitation from me to you, every year we do a fiesta-style Christmas and awards ceremony in December. I really would like to invite all of you to come see for yourself. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. There being nobody else to testify, the committee will now conclude the hearing on Bill 150 and on the nominations. The committee will continue to receive testimonies for the next few days, actually up till Tuesday. Please address your written testimony to the Committee on Education, Finance, and Taxation and submit it via email to Senator Joe S. San Agustin at gmail.com. My office is located at Rand Care Building, 2nd floor, Suite 3, 761 South Marine Corps Drive, Tamuning, Guam. Si Dios mercy for your attendance and participating in today's hearing. And for those at home, thank you for watching. It is now 10:54, and this committee is now adjourned. Thank you.